We appreciate you viewers and listeners. Please appreciate us. Remember, we just launched a Patreon campaign for just $3 a month. You get a special episode all to yourselves about the bloopers, behind the scenes activities, and how the ideas get formulated that bring our content to you. That's Patreon, patreon.com/WWV.
How can you talk if you haven't got a brain?
I don't know. But some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
Yes, I guess you're right.
Don't wanna be an American idiot. Don't want a nation under the new media.
We're staring at the United States, the empire, its decline, and if it's not brain surgery, what are we doing to stem the tides of this decline? Well, for our next interview, let's talk with a brain surgeon. Well, not exactly a brain surgeon. He's Dr. Professor Novella. He's a doctor of neurology at Yale University. He teaches several courses there at the med school, and very importantly to this web series, he hosts probably the most popular science-based podcast in the known universe. And it's called, appropriately, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And this interview, an interview that took me over a year to book, I kid you not, I am not exaggerating, over a year to book. In my mind, it was worth the effort, and I hope you think so too.
Sir, tell me your name and what you do.
I'm Professor Novella. I'm a physician who works at Yale University, and I'm the editor of Science-Based Medicine and the producer of The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe.
All right. A physician. Now, in what field?
I'm a neurologist.
All right. What is that? What's the difference between a neuroscientist and a neurologist?
So a neuroscientist is just a scientist who studies the brain and the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a neurologist, which means I'm a physician. I'm a clinician. I treat patients with neurological diseases. And I'm not a surgeon. That would be a neurosurgeon. They do surgery on the brain and nervous system. So I, like a medical doctor, specializing in the nervous system, the brain and spinal cord and the nerves.
And what school do you teach at?
I'm a full-time faculty at Yale University.
All right. So, dude, you're a neurologist,
Mm-hmm.
a teacher at a small backwater college called
Right.
Yale.
Right.
You produce a one of the best known skeptic podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, by miles. It's not just, and what was the thing you publish?
I'm the editor of Science-Based Medicine.
All right. That's quite a resume, dude.
It's a lot of work, but I enjoy it.
And for the audience's sake, I've been pursuing an interview with Stephen for over a year now. When we started out as a documentary, it was going to be a feature-length film, and I wanted to talk to one of my heroes in the scientific community about consciousness and this theory we're pursuing. And I was dying for him to shoot it down. Because you are also a very good debater.
Mm-hmm.
You get into scientific arguments, debates with both sides of the equation, scientists and non-scientists.
Yeah, I've been involved in a number of debates. They're a little bit controversial for scientists and skeptics because it's easy to get into a situation where the venue really favors the pseudoscientist. There's what we call the Gish Gallop, where you could throw out a lot of misconceptions in a very little amount of time, but you won't have the time to correct this rapid fire errors and factual misstatements and misconceptions. So it's an inherently unfavorable situation to be in. But if you do have like a moderated debate with a focused scope, then if you know both sides of the equation, you have to know not only your side, but the other person's side, you can do a good job.
I wish I had you with me the other day. I was interviewing a guy who published an alt-right book,
Hmm.
and just out there, angry bile, and he was doing that. He was just throwing shit at me,
Yeah.
you know, personal stuff, not at me, but to like Roe and Roe v. Wade
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. Oh, well, she was, boom, boom, boom. And he lists 10 really negative things about her, never minding the rule of law and the case. Anyways, I
Yeah.
hear. So, all right. So I've been looking forward to your scientific mind tearing down the premise for this web series.
Okay.
Okay. Um, our the thing we are exploring is why all these empires, all of them, have failed. And the one thing they've all had in common is that they were all made up of people with one common trait, consciousness.
Hmm.
And since consciousness is a self-referential system, and all self-referential systems fail, the foundation for these civilizations are based in failure. Have at me, dude. This is an honor.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my first reaction is that it's a little hyper reductionist,
Uh-huh.
meaning that you're looking at too low a level in order to explain something that's happening at a couple of levels, hierarchically above that. I remember similarly reminds me of, someone else threw a theory at me where they said they wanted to explain all of human civilization as a quest for serotonin. Like, all right, dude, that's a little hyper reductionist. I
Yeah.
don't think that like the brain's attempt at maximizing serotonin can really explain economies and
Mhm.
in society and culture and everything. Um, so I'm
Climate.
kind of having the same reaction. It's like, okay, sure, nothing. Everything fails. It's like, of course it does, because what's the alternative? The alternative is something is immortal,
Mhm.
and no system can really last forever. Just
Mhm.
entropy is enough to explain that. So yeah, of course, every single society that has ever existed, except for the ones that are currently at present, have at some point have failed. It's like every species goes extinct
Mhm.
on average every 2 million, about 2 million years is the average lifespan of a species. Of course, except for all the current ones. But that's like saying all people will die, except for the people who are alive right now. They haven't died yet. But everyone, we all know that everyone's going to die. Every species is going to go extinct. Every empire is going to fail. I think that's just no system can be self-sustaining forever. There's
Mhm.
just too many possibilities for failure. Statistically, something's going to happen. Some
Mhm.
bad combination of factors are going to eventually cause it to fail. I don't think you need to appeal to the nature of consciousness at a sort of a base level to explain the failure of countries at a hierarchically higher level. Does that make sense?
It does, but if you're a filmmaker, you
Yeah.
need to look. So,
Right.
in literature, they call it a literary device.
I get
In
you.
filmmaking, we call it a hook.
But
And
everything fails is a pretty good hook too. I mean, but that's I think probably a little
I
simpler.
wanted to get, sound intelligent about it. It just my own arrogance. But thank you. It's taken a year, but I finally got you
Okay.
to. All right. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, dude. Tell me what that's about.
So it's a weekly science and critical thinking podcast. So for about an hour and 30 minutes or so every week, we talk about science news items. We do listener email. We have a fun segment called Science or Fiction. We might talk about etymology, just interesting science terminology.
Mhm.
We challenge our audience to identify weird noises because it's a podcast, so you
Oh
could
yeah.
it's an audio gag.
That's
Things like that. We
Chase,
do
right? Your brother.
we do puzzles. We have a critical thinking segment called Named Out Logical Fallacy, where we try to deconstruct arguments. So it's mostly science, but it's from a critical thinking point of view. We're trying to teach people how to think about science news and scientific items and weird claims and arguments and everything. Not just here's some information, but here's how we think about it. Here's how we can deconstruct it and wrap our heads around it and know what's real and what's not real, which is, I guess, the ultimate goal is to figure out what to believe and what not to believe.
we've interviewed, and don't get jealous, even though you were my first choice a year ago. We kind of lost track of each other.
Yeah.
And since then, we've interviewed 22 college professors, university deans, and what have you. Some really smart people, and they're always saying, yes, it's, you know, in political science, this is wrong, and this is headed towards failure, and we're going down the tubes. But if we educate people, if we tell them there's hope, or at least we can delay the end of the civilization, pump the brakes, you know, that kind of thing. So how many people do you reach every given week?
So we have about 300,000 downloads a week for the podcast.
We've been doing this a month and a half. I won't even tell you our numbers.
But I mean, yeah, we have the advantage of we got in early in the podcasting thing.
Yeah.
And we were
10 years old, right?
14.
Oh,
14. So
okay.
yeah, May 4th. So just coming up, we'll be 14 years old. So that's right at the very beginning of podcasting. And there's no substitute for that. Right place, right time. You know what I mean? You get in early on the ground floor. And now it's a crowded market. So it's very hard to break in. Not that you can't do it, but just the numbers are different now. You can't really expect, you know, that kind of instant penetration. You're immediately competing with so many other venues. And same thing, like we have other things that we do, and we've started more recently.
What about their conventions or get-togethers? What do you call them?
Yeah, so we have conferences. Yeah, so we co-sponsor the Northeast Conference on Science and Skepticism, which is an annual science and critical thinking conference. The next one's coming up in July in New York City. And then there are the CSI conference, which has been pretty much every year for the last few years. We were just in Europe, in the UK last year, and this year we're going to Australia and New Zealand. So they're all over the world. You know, we try to go to as many as we can, but most of us have day jobs, so we can't be spending all of our time going to conferences. But they're a lot of fun because then, you know, we live our life basically online. Most of our outreach and activism and interaction with other people is online, which is great. But there's something still about getting face to face with people, and it's very energizing, you know. So we like to do that at least a couple times a year.
And what motivates you?
I want to fix the world. I know it's pathetic. I'm that guy, you know, in the cartoons. Like so much wrong on the internet.
Yeah, we've done 22 episodes. I think I've said it 11 times.
Yeah, that's. You know, I get bothered when there are things that are wrong with the world, you know, and this is, I think, something I could do to help move things in a good direction. So everyone needs to have purpose, right? This is just human psychology. The research shows that people are happiest when they have a purpose that they are working towards. So they're meaningfully working towards some kind of purpose. This is my purpose. This is what gets me up in the morning. You know, I want to make the world a little bit more scientifically literate and a little bit more critical thinking. And I do agree with everyone who says, yeah, the first thing we need to do to fix all these problems is to educate the public more. That's always going to be the case. And that is sort of like the baseline. It's like the forest can't be green unless all the trees are green, right? We can't have a rational society unless a critical mass of people are rational. There's really no substitute. There's no way to fix a society made of irrational people. There's no law you can pass. I think we're seeing that now. No matter what systems you have in place, no matter what guardrails you have, if everyone's crazy, it doesn't matter, right? You know, you got to have a certain baseline of I think knowledge, of critical thinking, of reasonableness, and you know, hopefully the pendulum will swing the other way, and you know, people will realize, yeah, I guess we do have to pay attention to what's really real. You know, we can't just believe what we want to believe in our own little bubbles.
So let me draw a comparison here. I've made some of the most successful but really bad science fiction movies of all time. And you, on a day-to-day basis, you go and train young people to become doctors at Yale, and are practicing physician, and so you're saving lives 9 to 5, but you're just not satisfied with that.
No, it's not enough.
You shame me, my friend.
I know I largely do it because it's fun. It's my brothers and my friends and people that I'm
Yeah.
with. We all enjoy it. It's kind of a group endeavor. We started out doing it to see if it, what would happen, and it just sort of took on a life of its own, and we're just riding that wave as long as we
Mhm.
can. But yeah, it's but I that's true, but I have to say most academics have their 9 to 5, and then they do something else weekends and evenings, right? I'm not
Their books.
unique in that way. This is what most academics do, or most intellectuals, I think, do. They do their 9 to 5, and then they do their passion. The thing that's when they do their research or their outreach, or they run their charities or whatever it is that they do, and that's all I'm doing. I spreading the word whenever I can.
I'm going to argue with you.
Hmm.
Riding the wave. I'm going to take that aquatic metaphor and say, you're swimming upstream, dude.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm riding the wave of the podcast
Okay.
and the community, but yeah, in terms of the bigger picture,
Uh-huh.
absolutely, I agree that we are swimming upstream. I know. I know. Like every activist group wants to portray themselves as a beleaguered minority fighting against, heroically against big forces, but. Numerically, yes, we are in the minority. We are arrayed against multiple organizations and movements and beliefs that all seem to be much better funded than we are. And here we are, just a small group, this ragtag group of science communicators who are trying to interject a little bit of reason into this. So I do think, it can get dispiriting every now and then when you realize what we're up against. But I think we have an effect that is much greater than our numbers. We have so I think our impact is huge. Even just that one lone voice of reason can have a huge impact. And we do get a lot of media attention. And I think our websites tend to be disproportionately represented, very high, because we I think care about quality. And I think there's still an advantage to quality in terms of presence on the internet. I mean, Google rankings try their hardest to reward quality, good links, good references, etc. And so, I think we're having a good effect. Just to give you one example, this is not me personally, but members of our community, the Guerrilla Skeptics, have had a huge effect on the quality of information on Wikipedia, which is becoming like a go-to
Oh, yeah.
resource for humanity. So, and they're kicking ass, and they're arrayed against countless charlatans who are trying to put false information into that resource. And here's a small band of skeptics who are just completely trashing them because they understand quality control. They are playing by the rules. They understand scholarship, and the other side doesn't. So the same thing, like science-based medicine is one group blog by a few, regular contributors arrayed against countless sites promoting nonsense. But we're right in there with the mix. We rank on the first page usually on these topics. So we're kind of the charlatans spoilers, but we're there, with thousands of articles pretty much on anything. So I do, even though we're a small group and we're swimming upstream, we can have a massive effect, and that's still, it's good to see, and that does help motivate us to keep going.
I would think another thing that should motivate you guys is that there can be a big effect, not just in the minutia of editing a Wikipedia page, but hasn't there been a big swing in the understanding of climate change, and more and more people in the United States are worried about it?
Yeah, it's always hard to know. Surveys are problematic, and again, we like to see objective data rather than go by our own confirmation bias. But yeah, I do think that we influence the conversation, and that's one of them. I think we're trying to move the needle on the public acceptance of climate change, the public acceptance of vaccines, the public acceptance of GMOs.
I've got to interrupt you there. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Stephen,
Yeah.
but you're never going to win that fight.
Oh.
Jenny MacArthur's McCarthy, Jenny MacArthur.
Jenny McCarthy, yeah.
She has really nice tits, dude.
Yeah, it's true. It's hard to argue with that. But the thing is, I also try to imagine what would the world be like if we weren't here, right? If all of these voices were unopposed. Because the scientific community, obviously, I love them; they're great, right? But this is not a skill set that they generally have,
No.
and they're generally not interested in engaging with the people that they call the kooks, right? They think, they're on the fringe, they're the kooks. I don't want to sully my academic reputation, even acknowledging their existence, and so they leave the conversation unopposed. It really is an ivory tower syndrome, unfortunately, still. And so, it's kind of left to a very small group of science communicators, and some are self-identified skeptics, meaning that we emphasize critical thinking as well, to really step in that breach and say, no, you have to interface with the public. Someone has to be there to explain why the anti-vaxxers are wrong, why the global warming deniers are wrong, why the anti-GMO crowd is wrong. It's
creationism.
Yeah, why creationism is wrong. It has to be, somebody has to do it. And sometimes we address things that you may think of are silly, like why do we bother debunking Bigfoot? That's the one that always comes to Loch Ness Monster. It's like, well, it's not so much about Bigfoot. It's not like he's such a big deal. It's the point, though. It's the principle of they're using bad science and they're teaching the public bad science for the purpose of promoting one particular belief system at that moment, but it's really the creating the misunderstanding of how science works. That is the underlying problem. They're teaching conspiracy theories, for example. They are sowing distrust in the scientific establishment. They're sort of breaking down the institutions of science, which relies upon the public valuing the work that scientists do. So if the public distrusts scientists because of Bigfoot, suddenly the Bigfoot issue is more important, right? Because of the bigger issue. And then those same people say, well, they were wrong about Bigfoot. Maybe they're wrong about vaccines, or whatever, about global warming. So it's all together. It's all together. We have to, and the other thing is people are interested in UFOs or the Bermuda Triangle or astrology or Bigfoot, whatever.
Or
we don't care. Yeah. Or celebrity endorsements or whatever it is. They care about that. That's a great opportunity to teach them how real science works because we're already halfway there. They want to know about a subject. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the evidence. Is ESP real? How do we know? Let's find out. And it's a great teaching opportunity. And then at the end of the day, they think, science works if you do it right, not, those scientists, you can't trust anything they say. So that's the bigger picture that we're looking for, not necessarily every individual issue.
Continuing with the swimming upstream.
Yeah.
Could it also be more difficult for you guys? Let me just throw this out for you to tell me I'm full of shit again. Okay. The physics is hard, and it's hard like gravity. And you drop a bowling ball and a wiffle ball, they hit at the same time. If you ask 9 out of 10 people on the street which one hits first, they're going to say the bowling ball. All right. And by the way, it's not going to fall at a unique speed or a singular speed. It's going to accelerate exponentially. Not 1 + 1 = 2 and 1 + 3. It's exponential. Everything in science is counterintuitive. It's much easier to think about Jenny. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. Science can be hard, right? No one should pretend for a moment that it's easy. That's also part of the problem. People underestimate the depth and complexity of expert knowledge, right? But that doesn't mean it's inaccessible. There's a lot of cool things, tremendously cool things about science that a layperson can understand at their level. You don't have to understand all the underlying mathematics to get basically how gravity works or what a black hole is. I have no idea what the math is that governs a black hole. That's way beyond where I went in education. But I can understand conceptually at a layperson's level how freaking cool a black hole is, for example. So we're always trying to, that's a very important meta question is you have to know your audience and you have to engage with your audience at a level that they will appreciate, that is accessible to them. But at every level, science is cool. And we just try to show people that and take them as far as they will go. And we're in that process too. It's not like we're some lofty location. We're mainly just science enthusiasts. And like I said, every scientist,
something, right?
Yeah, every scientist is a layperson outside of their narrow area of expertise, right? So most of us are also just science enthusiasts too. And like I'm a neuroscientist, but I think physics is cool, I think evolution is cool. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but I can understand it at a sophisticated layperson's level. And we're always trying to bridge that gap, and connect with scientists who are great communicators and to understand the science well enough ourselves that we can explain it. As science communicators, and it's all good. You could talk to 5-year-olds and explain science to them in a way that they will appreciate. High school students, college students, adults, other scientists, outside their area of expertise. You just have to know your audience, know how to make the science interesting and accessible at any level, at multiple levels simultaneously, if you can. That's just part of the skill set of doing that.
Are you guys vying for the Carl Sagan of our times role?
I have to say no in that I don't think anyone can be the Carl Sagan of their time because
that's disappointing.
I just think because it's generically, I think there are some people who get into a field, like they create a field in a way, and then nobody will ever be them, right? Like we'll never have a magician as famous as Houdini. There will never be a martial arts movie star.
Your friend, the amazing Randy.
Yeah, Randy's fantastic, but only Houdini is iconic in a way that, right? Muhammad Ali, there will never be a heavyweight champion as famous as Muhammad Ali. There will never be a kung fu movie star as famous as Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's iconic. He became that thing. Carl Sagan is now the iconic science communicator in such a way that I don't think anyone could ever achieve that. It's like Albert Einstein. No scientist will ever be as famous as Albert Einstein, right? I think there's just something about being the first one in a field to achieve a super level of fame that creates an unattainable bar. So I hope, occasionally people have made the comparison of either myself or other people to Carl Sagan. It's always flattering, but I don't endeavor to be that. I don't think it's really attainable. I'm just trying to be the best communicator I can be.
Title.
What's that?
Your brother Jay, wouldn't he accept that title?
Oh, he probably would. Yeah. But I honestly, I think I'm just trying to be the best science communicator. I'm trying to be the Steve Novella of science communication. I don't think anyone could really be the Carl Sagan of science communication after Carl Sagan.
Well, you're not only humble, you're a good man.
Just trying to call it like I say it.
All right. Let's get negative here. And I'm done complimenting you.
Okay.
Right? I promised it before we started the interview that I'd try not to gush, but I've done nothing but gush. 2009 Pew Research Group poll exploring the American people's relationship with science found that they loved scientists in 2009. In 2009, they thought every dime put into science would be returned to that society tenfold, that there was no limit to what the scientific community, could add to our world. What happened?
Nobody knows, but everybody has a theory, right?
What's yours?
And I do think I have a list of possibilities. One is social media and the internet, which is, of course, is the favorite go-to. Like anything that's happening today, it's got to be this one big thing that's happened recently. So, but it is true the democratization of information has been a great thing, but it's been a double-edged sword, and we haven't really figured out how to wrestle with what it has unleashed. It has, so not only does everyone could be a content creator, right? Which creates the sense that all information is equal. It's great. It's great. I'm taking full advantage of it. You know, here I am just out of my office, in my home, creating social media and competing with the big boys, right? You know, whoever large multimedia companies, I could do it for $20 on a microphone. You know what I mean? Anybody could do it. It's great. And I do think to some extent the quality does rise to the top, but also the lowest common denominator, the sensationalism rises to the top, and the things that are psychologically appealing. And it gives people the illusion of all information is equal and there's no more quality control. So I think just across the board, we've lost the editorial filter of information. And so everything now is lost in the noise. It's all noise now. And I think new systems will emerge from that, but and I do think that's sort of happening to some extent now. But it was I think a genuinely disruptive technology. It'll be disruptive in some good ways and some bad ways. So now we're living in the age of fake news, where anything you don't like is fake news, and there's a backlash against expertise, and quote unquote elitism. And the elites of the world screwed up, but that's because we're people and we always screw up. We're flawed. Nobody has. Nobody's perfect, and so it's kind of like I do make an analogy to children growing up. When you're a young child, you think your parents are infallible and they know everything and they're perfect. And then when you're a teenager, you think your parents are assholes because you realize they're not perfect. You kind of feel like they've been deceiving you, and you were just deceiving yourself. But then as you get older, you can appreciate the good and the bad and the complex and everything, and you have a more of a mature adult relationship with your parents. I find the same
coming of age.
Yeah, coming of age. I think, we're sort of coming of age in an internet era where we realize that, the experts are flawed. They make mistakes. They don't know everything, but that doesn't mean they know nothing, and so that's part of what we try to do, is get people to a mature relationship with science, because I do think people have this childlike look of scientists must know everything, because, and then they think, oh my God, they're wrong about something, or this guy committed fraud, or this has been politicized. It's all fraud. Nobody knows anything. They sort of overreact. It's like, no, science is a flawed tool, but it works when you do it right. And we slowly, messily grind out better answers, not the definitive truth, but it's a method that does work and has advantages. And it's kind of a complicated, mature relationship with knowledge and science and logic and everything. It takes a while to get there. And so we're trying to get people there. I think social media has kind of disrupted things, and we're kind of in this adolescent phase of everything is fake and everyone's an asshole. But I think we'll grow out of it as a society.
Can I ask a provocative question then?
Sure.
What was the name of the first printing press?
The Gutenberg, you mean?
The Gutenberg, yeah. And then there was the Bible that was translated.
Yeah.
Bible, I think it was.
Gutenberg Bible, yeah.
Wasn't that kind of like the first internet, mass communication and all that?
Well,
and didn't that result in a very tumultuous, mortal religious war period?
No, absolutely. Every time there's been a new medium of communicating information, people have thought it's the end of the world because we're giving, communication to the masses. They thought about it at the printing press in the 19th century, the 1800s, when people could print pamphlets and spread pamphlets around. They thought this is the end of democracy. Anybody could print anything they want. And then with radio and TV, it's the same thing. And now it's the internet. Oh, yeah, we survived all of these disruptive communication technologies. We'll survive this one once we get through our growing pains. Again, it's hard to predict the future. We'll know once we get to the other side of it, people will be able to look back and have an idea of how the things happened. But it's fascinating to live through. I got to say that it's been, again, when we started this, when I started the skeptical movement, like in 1996, my involvement with the skeptical movement in 1996, I never would have imagined that I would be here now.
Mhm.
23 years later, I would not have predicted any of the things that happened. So I don't think we can predict what the next 20 years are going to bring. We just have to kind of go with it.
So I'm going to ask you to predict, how will history judge you?
I mean, again, I think that's a fool's errand to try to predict that. I can only tell you what I hope.
Dude, that's my job.
Yeah,
Have you seen Alien versus Predator?
I actually like that movie, but so I mean, I hope to be seen as somebody who is an intellectual who tried to engage meaningfully in conversation with society, and hopefully helped move the ball forward a little bit. I think it would be hubris to think anything more than that. But I think honestly, if I had to bet, I would bet that I'm going to be completely forgotten by history. I mean, I don't think. I think in 200 years, I'm the kind of person who would be totally lost in the historical noise. I think science communicates. If you look back, who were the great science communicators? Like, who was Darwin's bulldog? Do you know who that is? How many people know who the person who was championing evolution?
If you say it,
you'll probably recognize the name. So everybody remembers Darwin because he was Darwin, but they don't remember necessarily T.H. Huxley. You probably recognize the name now that I mention it.
I do, yeah, and I remember somewhat of his quote on the floor.
Yeah. Huxley was the guy who was the champion for science and this new theory of evolution. So I mean, if I could get to the level of
didn't he say something like someone was insulting him and like, oh, so you're from a gorilla? And his comeback was, I hope I am, because I prefer the gorilla than you.
Yeah. I think that was Huxley. Yeah, I the exact quote. But yeah. He was the guy who did the debates with the creationists. Because Darwin wasn't that great of a public speaker. He was. So yeah, they I think have a lesser legacy in terms of history, but they're important in their time. Right, T.H. Huxley was hugely important in his time, and was hugely important to the acceptance, the more rapid acceptance of evolutionary theory and making Darwin what he was. So, if I could have a positive influence on my time, that's great. I really don't expect to have a huge impact on history. I'm not doing the kind of things that tend to get immortalized in history. But who cares? I'll be dead.
You need a Thomas Eddington or a Minkowski like Einstein.
Right.
All right. Do you have a little bit more time?
Sure. Go ahead.
Because I would be negligent if I didn't talk to you about consciousness.
Okay.
The first thing I wanted to talk to you about for the feature.
Yeah.
Will we ever? Anything else you want to add on science moving forward and all that, and your role?
I think we covered it. We can go on to consciousness.
We certainly I focused on Jenny's tits, but
understandably.
So transition.
Yeah.
Douglas Hofstadter, consciousness. Do you think we'll ever come up with a scientific explanation on the emergence of consciousness?
Absolutely. Why not? It's a phenomenon of this universe. I will never limit what science will be able to figure out. If you think about the things that we're understanding today, and 100 years ago, 200 years ago, they were magic. They were unfathomable. But science relentlessly moves forward. What I predict is going to happen with consciousness is that some combination of deconstructing how the brain works, sort of reverse engineering the brain, and also artificial intelligence, basically trying to model brain function with silicon, with computers. We'll figure it out. We'll be able to build a machine that has consciousness, right? I do think the philosophers of consciousness and scientists who are dealing with it, neuroscientists, are making tremendous progress. I don't think we can I don't think we're at the point where we can have like a really unified theory of consciousness yet, but we're getting there. I do think this is something, and It could be 50 years, it could be 500 years. I don't know, but I don't see any reason why we won't get there at some point.
Does it piss you off when you see those commercials and everything that where they're advertising that they have artificial intelligence? That, I mean, there's been no machine that has passed the Turing test, as far as I know.
Right. Well, I think the thing is, AI or artificial intelligence does exist. It is a term used by computer scientists to refer to a certain type of computing, algorithms, and now we have self-learning algorithms, et cetera. So that is AI. You have AI in any video
There's
game.
different levels of it.
Yeah, there's different levels. But so
not consciousness.
there's a terminology problem. So there's computer scientists use the term general AI to refer to an AI system that is able to do basic problem solving, not task specific, but is able to do problem solving like a human being can. And then there's a separate question of self-awareness, which computer scientists don't even talk about right now because it's not something that's measurable. I think we probably will get to the point where we have an advanced artificial general intelligence computer that we will not know if it's self-aware or not. It will act as if it is self-aware, but we'll endlessly debate about whether or not it's really self-aware or is just acting as if it is, and if there's a difference, right? Maybe but the only reason why we know we're self-aware is because we can experience it subjectively, right? The only reason why I know you're self-aware is because I know that I'm self-aware, which is really the only thing I can know. And I'm assuming that if I'm a person and I'm self-aware and you're a person, you're probably acting like you're self-aware because you're experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing. But if we make a robot that acts like a person, we can't make that same analogy. I can't know that they're self-aware because I am, because they're not a human being. They're an artificial intelligence that we created. Maybe we didn't, wire it in such a way that it is truly self-aware. Maybe our machine is just mimicking self-awareness. But again, then philosophers will endlessly debate if there's even a difference between those two things. Maybe our own self-awareness is all an illusion. And I think it is on some level, depending on how you look at it. So, at some point, we'll get to the point where we have an artificially intelligent machine that has human level general intelligence. And we'll just have to assume that it's self-aware because there won't be any way for us to tell the difference between an exact mimicker and the real thing, whatever that is. We can only tell from theoretical basis of, is it wired in such a way that it should be on a theoretical basis self-aware?
Can I pose a sci-fi question?
Yeah.
In the future, will the fundamentalists, will they be arguing that it's not self-aware because the scientists didn't give the machine a soul?
I suspect that somebody will make that argument. How mainstream it becomes, I don't know, but probably.
Right, I can definitely see, dude. I'll produce it.
It's a soulless machine, right? It's not. It's an abomination.
So are you, Stephen.
Yeah, well, that's true, but we're talking about the religious fundamentalists now. That, from their perspective, it's a soulless machine that mimics a human being, and I'm sure someone will think it's an abomination. We'll definitely. I think I'll be surprised if that doesn't happen. If we put it that way.
Because we do what you do. We talk to both sides of the fence. We've interviewed a couple of fundamentalists, and we went to a Trump rally.
Sounds like fun.
No, it was scary, dude.
Was it?
Yeah. You can see my microphone start to tremble, and my knees were. You don't see it because it was a 3/4 shot. But my knees were trembling as well. Not in fear for me, but for the country.
Yeah, just seeing that emotion there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I'm a devout atheist. I went through a period of my life with the Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and all that kind of shit. And so hearing these people tell me, looking me dead in the eye and saying, he's the Messiah. He was put into his mother's womb and to save the United States as an adult, and he has come to save us. And
wow.
Yeah, wow. And that's when the microphone starts going like this. And I'm like, oh, let's get out of here.
That is scary. That is scary.
Well, you should think it's scary because what's with firing all these scientists from the EPA and the Department of Energy? Why?
Mhm.
Why? Why do they feel threatened by scientists?
They feel threatened by the truth, by reality, because they can't control it.
Mhm.
Reality is what it is. It's not whatever's convenient for their agenda or their narrative. And if you have somebody who is speaking truth to power, right, who is saying, hey, this is what the reality is, regardless of whatever your agenda is or what you want, and we have respect and expertise and credentials, that's a problem,
Mhm.
right? So that's why authoritarians, that's the first people they get rid of, right? Anybody with any genuine expertise, right, who could challenge their authority.
I The previous interview that'll be published prior to this one is an artist, an author who published an article in Psychology Today. But she said the first people to go are the poets, the artists, not the scientists. Of course, she's a poet and an artist.
Right.
So
Well, I mean, the intellectuals, I wouldn't really distinguish.
yeah,
Just the intellectuals are the first people to go, historically speaking.
I made a lot of movies in Prague, and I met Václav Havel. And
Hmm.
it's one of the first people they imprisoned, the Russians, when they took over. So, just a poet, liberal,
Yeah.
drunken, fun guy.
Yeah.
He's got to go.
But he had subversive ideas. Right.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And he did till the day he died. But I digress.
Yeah.
Okay, that's AI. Fundamentalism. Give me touch on that. We've interviewed three of them.
Hmm.
And we've tried to have intelligent conversations with them, but and they are reducing in numbers, and young people aren't signing up; they're leaving the flock. But their power right now has, in my opinion, their political power has never been greater. How long will that last?
Yeah. Again, I hate predicting the future, but all I can tell you is the
You're a
current.
scientist, dude. What good are you for?
No, we don't do that. We don't predict the future. So, the current trends, I mean, I think short term and long term, super long term, the trends are, I think, towards less fundamentalism,
Mhm.
more enlightenment. I hope that continues. I think there's a certain base level mysticism that is inherent to just the human hardwiring, to the human brain, that we're never going to get rid of. People need to think that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and that lends itself towards belief in the mystical or the supernatural. And like as religions waned, then things like astrology increase. So it's going to be one thing or the other. I think the best thing you can hope to do is just, again, teach science, teach critical thinking. I hope you keep that ascendant in the human species, and hope, and try to maneuver people to, I think, more benign
Mhm.
belief systems, if you will, uh, at least, and really try to minimize and marginalize the real malignant belief systems.
Mhm.
So again, that's why I personally don't try to take faith away from people. I don't care if you need faith to get up in the morning, good for you, but
Mhm.
let's keep it, benign. Let's keep it reasonable, rational, personal. Don't think that, you have the magic answer to things, or that you can impose your belief on other people. Let's have respect, for personal freedom.
Mhm.
Keep it sort of cordoned off, if you will. But if people need it for their own personal way of dealing with their life, who
Yeah.
cares? Yeah.
Well, let me throw another one at you. I'm sure you've heard of Michael Shermer.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I read an article, and I don't think it was his original idea, but it was the first time I heard this, and that is the desire to hear a story, to make up a story, and to come to a conclusion, whether it be mystical or what, is a remnant, sort of a vestigial organ from our primordial times and fight or flight. And
Hmm.
the example he used was a young lady goes down to the watering hole to collect some water and have a drink. Maybe not even collect the water, just to have a drink, hunter-gatherer. And she hears the reeds rustling. She projects it's a saber-toothed tiger and gets the fuck out of Dodge. Now she goes
Hmm.
thirsty that night, and it was just the wind in reality. But if it was a saber-toothed tiger, her species, she would not procreate and what have you. and that helped us survive, helped us to evolve. But now it harms us. Now it gets in our way, a la religion, a la astrology, and all that. What do you think of that theory?
No, I think that's correct. I think that's fundamentally correct that we evolved heuristics, ways of making quick decisions about the
What does
world.
that word mean?
A heuristic is just what I said. It's a quick mental shortcut. Like
Okay.
if I hear something I don't know what it is, I'm going to assume it's a predator. That's a heuristic, right? Or if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I'm going to assume it's a duck. That's another heuristic, the representativeness heuristic. So we
Learned
have
a word
these
today.
with these rules of thumb that are optimized for survival,
Mhm.
which is not the same thing as being optimized for having an accurate view of reality.
Okay.
Evolution doesn't care if it's accurate; it just wants to know that it's going to maximize mathematically our probability of surviving. So you're right. We obviously are descended from
Mhm.
the cavemen who assumed that the rustling was a predator and
Mhm.
didn't go check it out for themselves, right?
Yeah.
So almost we've been
You should
selected
go check
for, yeah, you shouldn't go check it out for yourself. You should just be gullible and believe it. And just pattern recognition. So that's it. We're great. We are storytelling animals. We are, we are hardwired for pattern recognition. We tend to be risk averse. It's very easy to scare us. It's a lot harder to reassure us with cold facts. We believe when other people in our social group tell us things, we tend to believe it. So these are all tendencies that probably are survival advantages in a tribal, social species, but they don't serve us well in a complicated post-industrial civilization, where we are dealing with really complicated questions and a lot of information, and the occasional psychopath or con artist could exploit these tendencies in us to believe storytelling and for pattern recognition. So we need critical thinking skills. Critical thinking skills are skills for the 21st century, right? We didn't necessarily need them when we were living, on the savannah and hunting with a group of 200 people in our tribe. But now that we're living in a world with 7.5 billion people with technology and the internet and everything, we absolutely need logic and science and critical thinking skills. These are modern tools that we need to survive in the society and to compensate for all of these biases and these flawed heuristics that we evolved. Absolutely.
God, I wish I could have articulated that the same way you can. All right. We end up most of our episodes with suppose you fail at your job, not your employment job, but your passion. Suppose you don't educate humankind fast enough. How do you think the United States ends?
So just wait. What if the United States fails as a nation? How do I think that will happen?
Take a wild guess.
Okay, I think it probably.
And by the way, you get a lottery ticket, and if yours wins,
yeah, it's like are we playing bingo? Yeah, apocalypse bingo.
Yeah.
I'm probably being biased by recent experience, but I do think that it would be a political failure. That the system itself, the political system, will fail because too many people violate the democratic norms of our institutions. That it's obviously too easy for an authoritarian demagogue to get people to throw away everything they apparently cared about to scare people, to violate, to think that again we will trade a freedom for security. And if that gets past a certain tipping point, I think that's when democracies fail. When people are willing to give up too much of their freedoms because they've been scared into thinking that they need security. Right? I mean, that's how Senator Palpatine took over the empire, took over the republic and turned it into an empire. He convinced them that we were being threatened. I need these emergency powers. I need the stormtroopers. Boom, you have the empire, right? Yeah. It's a fictional example, but that's how it happens. That's based on reality. That's how authoritarians take over. So I think that's probably our greatest vulnerability.
That's the Easter Island, many of the theories of Easter Island and the Vikings in Greenland, based with similar theories.
Right.
They're just theories.
Yeah,
We don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
exact things. Anything you'd like to add, young man?
It's hard to say it with everything. I'd say stay skeptical,
Uh-huh.
that's always my best advice. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Don't believe it. Always question everything, question authority, but be humble in yourself.